The legend of King Solomon is one of wisdom, wealth, and divine favor, but there exists a far darker tale hidden beneath the splendor of his reign. It is a story rarely spoken, a secret buried beneath the golden throne of Israel. It is the story of Solomon's final days, a descent into madness, sorcery, and a pact that would doom his soul for eternity. As Solomon's kingdom flourished, so did his thirst for knowledge. The gifts of wisdom granted to him by God made him the most learned man of his age, yet knowledge has a way of consuming its seekers. He built the great temple of the Lord, but within its hidden chambers, he constructed something else, something forbidden. Beneath the temple, in a dark chamber where no priest was allowed to enter, Solomon kept scrolls of ancient knowledge, records of entities far older than man. These texts were not from the prophets of Israel, nor from the scholars of the East. They were gifts from beings who whispered to him in the stillness of the night, beings who sought a place within the holy city. It began with dreams. In the deep hours of the night, Solomon saw visions of strange figures cloaked in darkness, offering him wisdom beyond human comprehension. They spoke of the veil that separates the world of men from the realm of forgotten gods. They told him of the power to command not just men and angels, but demons themselves. Solomon, who had always been a seeker, could not resist the lure of this forbidden knowledge. He began to experiment with names that should not be spoken, inscribing sigils of power within the temple walls. His wisdom became a weapon. His words could shape reality itself, and his gaze saw beyond the illusion of mortal existence. His power over demons grew, and he used them to construct his grand buildings, forcing spirits to labor beneath the sunless earth. But demons are never truly enslaved. They wait, they whisper, they tempt. Among the 72 spirits he bound, one was different. He did not rage against his chains, nor beg for release. His name was Belial, and he merely smiled. Belial knew patience, and Solomon, in his hubris, believed he could control what was never meant to be controlled. As the years passed, Solomon's mind grew restless. The whispers no longer came only in dreams but echoed through the halls of his palace. His wives, once loyal, began to fear him. The people of Jerusalem whispered of their king speaking in tongues, arguing with shadows that had no form. The temple, once a place of worship, grew cold, its fires dimmed, its walls stained with an unnatural darkness. One fateful night, Solomon, weary of his mortal limits, sought the final truth. In the depths of the temple, he performed a ritual not even the priests of Egypt had dared attempt. He sought the wisdom beyond wisdom, the knowledge that not even the angels possessed. But knowledge is never given freely. It is taken at a cost. The chamber was filled with a terrible silence. The lamps flickered, then died. A coldness gripped Solomon's heart as he felt the world around him tremble. And then he saw it. A presence beyond sight, a being whose very existence was a blasphemy against creation itself. Its voice was not heard but felt, like a sickness in the bones, a whisper in the blood. It called him by name, not the name of his birth, but the name only known to God. Solomon, wisest of men, fell to his knees, for he had gazed upon the face of something far older than wisdom. The entity offered him what he sought: complete knowledge, power beyond kings, dominion over realms unseen. But there was a price. A soul as great as his could not simply be taken. It had to be given willingly. And so, in that moment of weakness, Solomon made the final mistake of his reign. The next morning, the sun rose upon Jerusalem, but something had changed. The king did not leave his chambers for days. When he finally emerged, his eyes no longer held the warmth they once did. His words were colder, his orders more ruthless. The wise king who had once judged with divine wisdom now spoke in riddles that made no sense. His servants whispered of strange symbols appearing on the walls of the palace, of a shadow that moved unnaturally in the candlelight. The elders grew fearful, and even the priests began to suspect that the great king had been touched by something unholy. One by one, those who questioned him disappeared. His many wives, once the envy of nations, now shuddered at his touch. It was said that he no longer slept, that his footsteps echoed through the halls at unnatural hours. The kingdom he had built upon wisdom was crumbling under his own madness. It was the prophet Ahijah who finally dared to speak against him. He confronted Solomon within the temple, demanding that he renounce the darkness that had taken root in his heart. But the king merely laughed, a hollow, joyless sound that sent chills through the prophet's soul. He raised his hand, and the torches lining the temple walls burst into unnatural green flame. "You think you speak to Solomon," the king said, his voice layered with something inhuman. "But Solomon is no more." That night, the prophet fled Jerusalem, taking with him what little hope remained. Soon after, the kingdom began to break apart. The people revolted, the once loyal generals turned against their king, and the golden age of Israel began to fade. The great temple stood, but its sanctity had been defiled. Solomon's reign ended not in glory, but in whispers and blood. As the years passed, the stories of his final days were silenced. His deeds were rewritten, his darkness buried beneath the weight of his legend. The temple was cleansed, the sigils destroyed, but some say that in the deepest chambers, the shadows never truly left. Some say that Solomon's soul was never taken to rest with his ancestors, that even in death, he walks the halls of his ruined palace, whispering the secrets he was never meant to know. The wisest king became a cautionary tale, a warning of the price of forbidden knowledge. And somewhere, in the dark corners of the world, the entity that answered his call still waits for another seeker, another king, another fool who dares to gaze beyond the veil.